Hi everyone, I'm Rick Beato. This is part one of the definitive guide of how to tune your drum set, beginning with how to tune your snare like a pro. In this case, I have an old Ludwig Superphonic, same size that John Bonham used, a 14 by 6.5. This drum, I'm going to use, I have an Emperor X on here right now, but I'm going to put a controlled sound on it. I like to have a dot in the center that will actually control the sound. That's why it's called a control sound. And on the snare side, I'm going to put an Ambassador Hazy, which is a thinner Ambassador. I have a Diplomat on there right now, and it really depends. The Diplomat's a thinner snare head, but the snare side head, which is the resonant head the snares rest against, it's very important to have the right kind of head that you can tune up to where you get a lot of snare action on it. So let's take off these heads and begin. Okay, we're going to do one head at a time. I've loosened all the lugs here. I'm going to take the head off, pop it off like that. Go around the bearing edge and make sure that there's no schmutz on there. Now there shouldn't be, because this is a metal drum and it's usually not going to have any marks on it, even after using it for a long time. Sometimes though you will get glue residue occasionally, but I just go around with my fingernail and I just kind of scrape it off. There's usually just a little bit on here. It's best to get that residue off though if you can. There, I've gotten it off. That's pretty much all there is. Now, I take the new head right here, I go through, I crinkle the edges all the way around. Okay, it's really important with the snare because you're going to be getting, if you're with a rock band, you're going to be hitting a lot of rim shots. If you're an indie rock band, you don't have to worry about it too much because they're going to do a lot of center hits, mostly center hits, and the drum is not going to detune. But rim shots are going to detune, especially with the triple flange hoop that you're going to have on a Ludwig Superphonic. Okay? Now, because I'm kind of obsessive compulsive, I like to place the logo kind of opposite where the strainer is. So I'm going to face it towards the camera here. I put it on there, I move it around to make sure it's seated properly, which it is. I take my rim, okay. Now, I'm going to tell you about the rims again. This is a 1.6 millimeter rim. If you get a reissued Ludwig Superphonic drum, it will come with 2.3 millimeter triple flange tubes on it. It will not be the same as a vintage 1970s Superphonic like John Bonham would use, okay? It will be heavier than that. A early 70s or late 60s or early, 1970s Superphonic, it's much lighter than one of the ones that you'll buy at your local drum store. So I immediately went out and I bought the 1.6 millimeter triple flange hoops and replaced them on both sides. It made the drum lighter and it's much more resonant. Remember, the lighter something is, the more resonance it has because it takes less energy to put it into motion. Okay? So, once again, I'm going to put it on and I'm going to finger tighten the drum, finger tighten the lugs. Okay, the heads are finger tightened. The old head here, once again, if you look at it, if it's shiny, it's beat. Get rid of it. Okay, I finger tightened it. Now I'm going to press on it to stretch it out. Now, since I went through and I crinkled it with my thumbs, you're not going to hear that. You don't hear all that stretching out that you would normally hear. You notice that? It doesn't do it, okay, because I've already broken the glue. So, I'm going to go around the rim like I did with the heel of my hand, depress it here, and keep finger tightening it. Okay, I've got everything finger tightened now, and way too low. We're going to come to that. Next, we're going to change the bottom head and talk about how to attach the snares properly. Okay, I've loosened the head. This is a very beat head. This is a Diplomat. Like I said, a Diplomat is a little bit thinner than the Ambassador snare side head that I'm going to put on. You can see that there's dimples in it. This is really beat. These are such thin heads, they're very easy to break. That goes in the trash too. Got my new head. Once again, I'm obsessive compulsive, so I'm going to line it up here. I went around the edge and I made sure that there's no glue residue here, which there really wasn't. I seat the head, I spin it a little bit to seat it there, and ready to put the lugs on. Now, this head's going to be much tighter than some of the other heads. And one of the reasons is because the head is so thin, it's going to be tuned up to a much higher pitch. But it's going to be pretty cranked down. Now, one of the things that you want to make sure you do when you put the rim on which of course I didn't do at first, is to line it up, because your snare bed has to be aligned properly, so where the holes are. So here's one of the holes where the snares go through, and this is the other side. So this is going to go where the strainer is here, and this is going to be where the butt is. That's going to hold the other side of the snares when they get on. Okay, so that's the one thing you have to do. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put the head on and then say, oh shoot, I tightened it down and I've got these things in the wrong spot. That's the first thing you do with the snare side head, is you align the hoops properly. So let's finger tighten them now. Once I've put on the head, you're going to notice it. I finger tightened it, but there's a lot of crinkles in it. It's not even close to being tight. I'm going to go around the head again, press down, and finger tighten it. Now, because the head is so thin, it's very easy to press it down, and it's going to give you a few more turns. It's a little different. It's a different feel than the other heads are, because they're much thicker than these. So you can already see all the crinkling is pretty much out of the head already. But I'm going to go around twice on it, because right around here I see some. There we go. Now it's all just about out. You're not going to get it all out by hand. You're going to need a drum key for this, okay? I can see some crinkling right here, so I'm going to put some extra pressure there. Okay, now we're ready to start using the key. Okay, I finger tightened them, I've pressed down, tightened it more. Now I'm going to start using it. I'm going to take 2 drum keys this time because it goes a little faster. I'm going to put them on opposite sides of the drums and give it a turn like that. Okay, so I'm going to go here, then 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 I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. Okay, I'm going to look around the head to see. Now I don't have any crinkling. A little bit right here. I'm going to try and get that out here. There. Now I've got a basic, pretty even pitch for the drum. Now I'm going to start to crank it down even more. You want to have a nice tight resonant head on the snare so that you get a lot of snare action from it. If it's too loose, it's going to sound terrible. Okay, so you're going to really crank it down. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to go in my star pattern here. This is a 10 lug drum. Okay, so 1, 2, then I'm going to start skipping 1, and I'm going to go check it now. That's starting to get, should sound kind of like a timbali. This one's a little low. I'm going to crank that up a little bit. I'm going to go to the opposite side, crank that one up. I'm going to go through and check it like a timbali. That's pretty even all the way around, but I'm going to crank it even more. That's pretty good to start. Now we're going to replace the snares. Okay, replacing the snare wires. There's 2 different ways the snares can attach. You have your plastic strips like this, or you'll have a wire or cord. I like the plastic strips pretty much because they come actually with the snare wires. And the wire ones, are a little trickier to maneuver. Either one will work fine though. It depends on what you have. Okay, so thread these through. These are simply held in there with drum lugs, okay? I'm going to put it through on this side, both of them together, pull it through. Since this has already been used on the head, it's already got the indentions where it should go. Now, you make sure when you do it, right, that you thread it through here. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but you want to thread it through here first. Pull this out. I didn't take them off completely. I don't bother taking them off. Then I'm going to just finger tighten them like this, okay? So that you still have some play in here. Because one of the things you're going to need to do is you're going to need to move the snare wire over so that it's not touching the edge of the drum, okay? Right about there is going to be good. Right there. And then I'm going to tighten it up. Okay, so The snare, or the edge of the snare wire can't be touching the drum. Okay? So I'm going to tighten this first here because I don't want it to move. Okay, that's in a good spot there. Once again, this is not, you don't want this touching the bearing edge of the drum. Also, make sure that these little holes are not touching the drum as well, because you'll pierce the drum head. Okay, that keeps the snares up a little bit, and it protects the drum head from getting a dent in it. Okay, now this side, I'm going to go through here once again. I'm going to need to reattach the screws with a screwdriver. Okay, I've looped through on each side of the drum where they attach. Gotten it tight, got the snare beds even, so they're just about 1/4 of an inch off the bearing edge here, okay? So now if I hit the drum, it's going to sound horrendous. Check this out. This is how you don't want a snare to sound, okay? That's because it's not tuned nearly high enough. So I'm going to go back over. I'm going to loosen this. Okay, now we're going to tune the snare up. Now here's a little trick. You take your snare, your stick, you take your stick and you stick it there. That way you don't have the snares buzzing when you're doing this. So I'm going to keep cranking down this head until it's much tighter. Okay, I've gone ahead and numbered the snare in a star pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just for sake of ease. It's a good thing for you to do if you're not used to tuning the drums and can't really memorize the pattern. It's good to just put the numbers on there to begin with. It'll make it easier to make sure that you're following the right pattern. Okay, now that we have the snare wires attached properly, I'm going to start tuning the drum up. Now the drum is really loose, and it sounds great if you want to play something and have a bad snare sound. So we're going to start cranking it up here, and I'm going to follow the star pattern. I'm going to start with my 1 lug, and I'm going to give it about 1/2 turn. 2, 3. This tightens the head evenly. 4, 5, 6. Once again, I've got the 1.6 millimeter hoops on here, so that is like the 1970 Superphonic that Bonham used. If you buy a new Superphonic from Ludwig, it'll come with 2.3 millimeter hoops, which are thicker, put more weight on the drum, make the drum heavier, and the drum is not as resonant. So the first thing you do is take all the rubber off the pieces, buy the new hoops and put them on, and your snare will sound 1,000,000 times better right off the bat. Now I'm going to go around again, do the same thing. 1/2 turn. 2, 3. Tighten the head evenly. You don't want to go around one at a time. If you tighten these 2 lugs, it'll start to warp the head. So you want to go in that pattern to prevent that. Let's listen to it now. You're pretty much there. So that's a good length for the snare wires there. You can loosen them a little bit, get a little bit. So generally, rule of thumb is on a slower song you want the snares to ring longer, so you want them to last longer. For a faster tune you want them to be shorter. Okay, if I want to be shorter, I just tighten the snares. That's pretty good. Now, you can also work with putting some moon gel on it or some tape if you want to deaden the ring a bit. But this is a great tuning right here. All it was 2 times around with 1/4 turns, or maybe 1/2 turns, about that much. Just your wrist, just natural thing of your wrist. And that's a killer snare sound. So that's it for how to set up your snare drum. I'm going to actually do a few more videos on different tunings for snare drums for different styles. This is a great tuning for rock music, for country music, anything like that. But if we were going to do something for indie rock and we want a deader sound, I'm going to talk about how to tune for that. Stay tuned for my other videos on tuning your toms and tuning your kick drum. I'm Rick Beato.